You're listening to Orange Pulp, joined by our guest of last week, who, even though Tim is here, is going to be here anyway, which I didn't realize. We have Nick.
Hi, guys.
We have big time Timmy John.
Nick's a great sub. That's why we brought him back for the next
He
week.
was. He pleasantly
He could loosely
surprised.
be the fourth here.
Yes.
And then sub in anytime someone's not here.
I'm completely okay with
like
that.
if we hurt you in the parking lot afterwards, he's the host.
No.
Well, maybe not. Just go on.
Okay, I would love to see the host. I'm going to step out right now.
Hey,
and Nick,
hey, Brian.
I was going to, but when I get told, hey, we're going to step out. So, joined by Zach. And what do you got for us? Do you want to say anything fun? Because they seem to have time to mess around. Do you got anything on?
I mean, talking to Anish Shroff yesterday was a lot of fun. Either of y'all get to do that? Oh, Nick did. That's right. That's why he's here.
Yes.
Set that up for you, though.
Tim set that up.
So really,
Brian, what did you have to do with that?
I just did the whole covering for people who didn't know their stuff. And I'm going to put stuff in keywords. Because
It's called the blame game.
So Zach, you're doing keys to victory. Brian, come here.
Wait. I am okay. Zach, feed me. For those who don't know what that's for Orange Game Day Live, which apparently I thought our show was today as well when we started the first take of this. Great job by me, I must say. And I'd say that with oozing sarcasm. So, Orange Game Day Live on Periscope. Now, to get into the whole area of the sport, because let's be honest, we haven't talked about anything in over a minute this time. I think over 2. Well, no, not quite 2 minutes. So we're right on track. Syracuse football. Laughter's gone because that was crushing. Yes.
It was really disappointing because, the 2 weeks prior, South Florida and the week before that, see, the losses are getting so bad now. I'm forgetting Virginia. Those 2 games, it was like, all right, Syracuse, you lose to LSU, we get the point, but let's try to capitalize on these 2 games so then we can keep the bowl eligibility.
And I think the thing is, like, you look at the South Florida game, they were never in that game.
No. And
Virginia, they were in it, triple overtime. And yesterday they had a touchdown lead multiple times.
They seem to be a team of 2 halves. Like in the USF game, there was no.
It truly was a tape of 2 halves.
Or a tale of 2 halves.
Tale of 2 tapes.
Tale of 2 tapes.
Tale of 2 tapes, that's right.
We'll get it by the 5th time.
But in that in the USF game, they were never really in it. But then in the Virginia game, things were a little tough between both teams in the first half. And then Syracuse scored a lot, combining with overtime in the second half. And then this week, they were a first-half team. And then they couldn't really score in the second half. I just think the theme of the whole season has been, can you put together a full game?
No.
And that's really what Syracuse has not been able to do. And by the time, the clock says triple zeros, as Ray Lewis would say, it always has Syracuse on the short end of the stick. So
we have the idea of, okay, this season started off like it could go pretty well, and it was Syracuse's overall record was 3-0, and thinking, okay, what can they do? And okay, you didn't expect them to beat LSU.
Didn't expect them to be in the game as much against LSU as they were.
And shockingly, they were. And then going to USF, getting just run off the field. Close loss to Virginia in a heartbreaking fashion, as we talked about last show. If you haven't heard that, go to the For Tim podcast also on this page by our YouTube page of Orange Pulp.
When Tim was out with a head injury?
Yes, he was head injury.
Which developed into pneumonia.
Yes.
It was legitimate.
Speaking of that, Tim, how are you feeling today?
A little warm, a little tired, but I'm here. I'm doing my job.
Which
Patriots
I'm sure
fan.
Everyone loves. We'll get into the Patriots game. I'm sure everybody loves that we're all just in a small room with you as it's just circling around. Nick, you're kind of away from a mic. We're trying to do the share game, so bring you into it. Were you at the game, or did you at least? How did you see it, view it, and what did you take away from it?
Pittsburgh came in they're ranked number 25 going into this game. I don't think they were worthy of a top 25 spot. I still don't after this game.
Their only loss was to Iowa, who last-second field goal.
I would still, if you're ranking the ACC teams, I would put maybe Duke and North Carolina both ahead of Pittsburgh.
Can't put Florida State there anymore.
Duke is there. Duke's number 23 in the polls.
Four-time, or how do you not quadruple overtime?
Quadruple overtime.
4 overtimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you reference that?
I think you say 4 overtimes.
4 overtimes. Okay, I went to say quadruple, and then I was like, that doesn't sound right. Not
first quadruple overtime. Get 4 overtime. However,
I like quadruple.
I like quadruple. We'll call
Yes,
it that. First quadruple overtime game in ACC history.
The quad OT, and Duke came out on top against Virginia Tech. But continuing on with your point, go.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, 4th straight loss for Syracuse, and obviously Scott Schaefer on rocky ground as far as his coaching tenure. And
Do you think he survives the season?
The thing is, if they keep losing, it's going to be hard to justify keeping him, and it's kind of disappointing considering you got such a young team that's shown a lot of promise in some of these games, and the chance that he might not get to work with them at their full potential, especially Eric Dungy, who has the makings of a serviceable, if not better, quarterback. And if they can't get back into the win column, Schaefer probably is going to pay for it in his 3rd season. Everyone knows 3rd season's critical for coaches. And with this young team, it's a shame that he might not get the chance to help them develop into the team that they could become.
Obviously, over the course of a game, things happen, and Ishmael had a huge game, but dropped a very makeable catch for him that led to a field goal rather than a potential touchdown. Now, he wouldn't have scored on that play, but it sets you up in better field. Either gets the first down or comes just short of a first down, brings up 3rd down in a very short one. How do you see that changing in to give Pittsburgh the opportunity to move downfield and kick the eventual game-winning field goal?
I mean, it was a big play, but there were so many other things that added up to it. I mean, like, if Pittsburgh doesn't hold on to that ball for 9 minutes and 20 seconds, that was the longest drive I have ever seen. And it was just because Pittsburgh was playing smart football.
They run downfield better than just about anyone in the ACC. They block fantastically, and just going upfield, picking up a few yards is just a phenomenal aspect of Pittsburgh, and that's draining the clock worked for them perfectly. What do you see setting up in the idea of, okay, the going for the fake punt, connecting on the pass? Should Syracuse have been game planning, or is it just one of those things that happens?
It just happened. Scott Schaefer said in the press conference yesterday, he said it was a smart decision by them, and it's not really anything that you can plan for. I mean, that's why Syracuse runs it like that a lot. They love to run the trick plays, and yesterday the trick play really hurt them.
What did you take away from the fake punt?
Well, I thought, great creativity, but also I thought and again, I was not a football player, but from a technique standpoint, they committed to the punter real quick, and that gave him that opportunity to lob it over the top, and they got that first down. I think if they somehow play center field a little bit there, the closer and closer that he gets to the line of scrimmage, can that punter have the ability to then throw that little pass for the first down? So hindsight's 20/20, but if you look back, maybe Syracuse, had they played that just a little bit differently in 2 or 3 seconds after the snap when he's scrambling out, maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe they don't convert. Now we're talking about a different game. Maybe Syracuse wins. So it's a game of inches, it's a game of seconds, but that's how I would have maybe covered that.
And then even on that fake punt, Syracuse only had 9 guys up front because they went high-low, just trying to get that return because they wanted to go ahead and get the ball upfield. Because even then there was only like 4 minutes left in the game or something. But you're right. Hindsight's 20/20. But even then, you can't plan for a fake punt there.
One of those weird things where we're doing a podcast that isn't live, but just trying to do updates of what's going on right now. Raiders have the ball at midfield 47 of San Diego's territory, leading 20-3. Who had that one? I don't think anyone. And Cowboys are trailing the Giants 7-3, but they have the ball at the Giants' 31-yard line moving in. And as I say that, Oakland just gets set back to their own 46 after a penalty. But back into the Syracuse college football. Schaefer was the king of challenges, it seemed. He just kept getting right in spot calls, and officials don't really like to change a call on a spot call because it's so in their face, but there were so many times where it was obvious after going to the replay. Schaefer just kept challenging him, kept winning. That was such an impact in the game. What did you see for that?
I think it's the last one that cost them their last timeout, obviously allowed Pittsburgh to run down the clock. And you're right. There were a lot of reviews in this game. The first half especially seemed to drag on with a lot of these close calls. But, if you're a coach, you get the information you can get and make the best judgment call you can because, every yard makes a difference. It's especially true on that long drive. I believe 4 third down conversions by Pittsburgh on that last drive. A lot of them short.
5 third downs.
5 third downs. And the disheartening thing, if you're Syracuse, is this wasn't like Tom Brady going down the field and completing 8, 12-yard passes down the field. These were 4, 5, 6-yard runs by Pittsburgh, and Syracuse's run defense just could not get off the field, could not get that critical stop when they needed it. And at the very end, where Syracuse doesn't get the call as far as the ball placement, loses their last timeout, sets up the winning field goal, nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, Nick, I even said to you yesterday, it was really spotty officiating. It was like they couldn't make a call and then stick with it because everything that they called was so questionable. Like even going back to that targeting call.
Yes,
that,
exactly.
Which that would have changed.
Franklin,
You beat me to it.
Yeah.
But that would have changed everything, and it was the right call for him to not have to be leaving the game and the penalty getting taken off, that rule being changed where if the targeting rule gets flipped, the 15-yard penalty doesn't count. That was such a pivotal moment because one of the best defenders, if not the best defender for Syracuse.
I mean, midway through the second quarter, he had 2 tackles for loss, a sack, like 7 tackles total. I mean, he was all over the field yesterday. And if he'd been gone, that would have just completely changed Syracuse's defensive game plan.
Refs probably should have blown the whistle and said, we just want to let everyone know that was an amazing athletic play.
Oh, yes.
Instead of even debating whether or not, a guy who anticipates the pass, jumps up, still has the wherewithal to then make, the sack. That's a heck of a play.
Any football player worth his salt would have made that play because it was a good football play. It looked like it was going to be throwing, so you jump up, and then he held onto the ball after the pump fake and just brought him down, and it was just a great football play. We'll talk about Florida State losing to Georgia Tech in a little bit, but Syracuse next game on Halloween is in Tallahassee. Ooh, that looks like it could be rough for the Orange.
In the spirit of Halloween, maybe they should dress as another team. I don't know who it would be.
How about instead of dress, play like another team?
Well, maybe that too. But I will say this:
go out there in Patriots jerseys, maybe.
We're going to talk about it a little bit later. But Florida State just loses to Georgia Tech. What type of attitude is Florida State going to have? You would assume that they would be totally fired up, saying that was a fluke loss, should have never happened, and Syracuse come into town when you have a team already, ready to win. But you just look at the remainder of the schedule: Florida State, Louisville, Clemson, North Carolina State. That's a toss-up game. Syracuse
you
probably
call that a toss-up game.
Well, hey, how many early wins did North Carolina State get, and who was that against?
4-0 against nobody. But then
some JV high school teams, I think.
I think so, yeah. But you know what? We demolished those JV high school teams.
You did do that.
We got our first Wii U reference, and backed by popular demand, the North Carolina State Minute. Never mind. Well, we might do that later, but we're still in the Syracuse segment. You're listening to Orange Pulp. Maybe coming up later, backed by popular demand, and by popular we mean the one person who listens. The NC State Minute with their demolishment that happened. But you just think with Florida State looking so dominant into this week, especially after the second half rout of Louisville, losing to Georgia Tech, they're probably going to get their mind right. And do you see a 5th straight loss for the Orange?
Florida State losing to Georgia Tech was exactly what the Orange did not need. Because it's just going to fire them up. It's just going to bring them so much hurt, so much pain. And by them, I mean Syracuse, because Florida State, supremely good defensive team, always has been. Special teams, maybe not so much. But got a good quarterback in Everett Goldston. I think that this loss is just going to motivate the Seminoles, and it's exactly what Syracuse did not need.
I didn't think Delvin Cook had the game he was expected, and we're kind of already previewing that, but we'll get to more in-depth on that in a minute. But if you listen to Jimbo Fisher, winning isn't everything. For a team that didn't do a lot of winning last year and didn't make the tournament, both on their own volition and probably wouldn't have made it anyway. Syracuse basketball, our first basketball preview last year, 18-13, 9-9 in the ACC. Tim, talk about the three-point shooting initiative.
Well, there's been a lot of talk in the last couple weeks that's what Syracuse wants to do, is shoot the three. And I'm not entirely shocked. You go back even through the history of Syracuse. It's not like they never shot the three ball. So the stuff that's coming out in the media right now to say, well, Coach Boeheim says Syracuse offensively wants to shoot the three. Oh, really? Trevor Cooney, that's what he does.
It's kind of like coming out and saying, hey, we want to play the 2-3 zone.
Yeah, like we want to do what we do. But I did notice, albeit a scrimmage, of course, that Benajay seemed a lot more confident behind the arc when he was shooting at Orange Madness. I'm not really sure about Malachi Richardson yet as to whether or not he's a deep threat. And Caleb Joseph, that's a part of his game he has to work on. So we're really going to kind of see what these guards can do, if it's going to be, a trio of guys or 4 guys that can really shoot the three well.
Breaking news, 2-3 zone coming your way. As for the one-and-done rule we all know of, freshmen coming in and making an impact, it's something that's we've seen for a number of years. Calipari's made a career on it. Freshman is going to be a big key component to the Syracuse Orange. What do you see? How do you see them making an impact?
I mean, Tim's already touched on Malachi Richardson. He's just such a good talent. Obviously, the biggest prospect, I guess you can call it.
Yeah, one of the top names, one of the top 5 people discussed.
Yeah. Really good. I could definitely see him going to the draft. I mean, what's his first name? Tyler
Lydon. Yep.
He's really good. I'm really high on him. I don't think that he'll be jutting for the NBA after this year, but I could definitely see him develop 2-3 years and be a pretty solid player. And then there's Frank Harris.
I think so.
That sounds right. Frank Harris. I talked to him at Media Day, and I can't even remember his name.
We know what we're talking about. Don't worry.
Yeah, we definitely know what we're talking about.
We all have those mental breaks every now and again.
But I like him a lot, too. He just seems to have it all together in his mind. Talking to him, he discussed breaking down plays, and you could just see his mind working exactly how help defense was supposed to come in, how you move off the screen and the ball's right there. He just seems to have it in his mind. High basketball IQ is what a lot of people call it.
And that's critical because people think, a lot of people, they sort of make fun of Syracuse due to the 2-3. They're like, don't you play something else? And, I've heard several accounts that actually they play loads of man in practice because that's what they face. But when you talk about some of these freshmen, there's a lot of nuances to a 2-3 zone. It's not just you stand out there, flat, 2 guys at the top, three across the bottom. Syracuse has a thing where they hedge out high, really contest shots. There's a lot of other people that, I know Duke tried to emulate it a little bit last year.
A lot of success in reality. One of the big things with that was Kay being the head coach of USA team basketball. We'll hear about that coming in, and Zach zeroing in at the end of the show on Popovich taking over. We'll get that idea. But you see those 2 trading plans, and then Syracuse ran a little man in regular last year.
Yeah, and the critical piece, again, for Syracuse is having length on the wings. Some guys that would maybe end up being a 4, possibly even a 5 on a small D1 team or whatever have you, they end up being the 3 at Syracuse. They end up being the top guy out on the zone that can get to that shooter on the wing.
You look at Syracuse, and they almost have the size of a good NBA team.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Very much so. Of course, the center position is going to be a little up in the air. Christmas graduated, and Dajuan Coleman's going to be back, but he's been injury plagued since
that's the thing. Can he stay healthy?
He might have even got injured from his walk from Jamesville DeWitt over to the campus because it seems like that's been an issue for him. So,
in-game update for the NFL right now: Raiders lead 23-3. San Diego has the ball after a field goal being made by Jankowski for the Raiders. Just a 20-point blowout. A lot of blowouts we've seen. If the trend continues for the rest of today, Chargers will make some massive comeback just to fall short. That was a thing we saw a ton today. We'll get into NFL coverage later. Quick preview on that. But you thinking, whenever Boeheim has a great team, even when Carmelo was there, you had a point guard leading it. Boeheim's teams run through the point guard, McNamara, when they won the national title. Point guard's such a pivotal position. What do you see for this?
Well, I think over the last couple of years, I'm going to leave out the bad word here, but it was trying to make chicken salad out of chicken. It was like
defecation. That's
right. It was like what do we do? What do we do in this situation when when Ennis went pro, which he was totally not ready to go pro.
No.
Okay.
Can you blame him for going pro, though?
No, I don't
with
blame
how
it.
great his freshman year was. You only had, if you have the chance to go.
Oh, no, I don't blame him for going, but I'm just saying, like, his skill set was not ready on a lot of levels. Okay, but so then they kind of try to put Benajay in there, a bigger kid, come transfers from Duke, obviously a smart basketball player.
And that's the thing at Duke, he didn't play hardly
He didn't play at all.
And he's so talented.
But I think they saw last year with Caleb Joseph that they were really hoping he was going to be some kind of a point guard, which we've learned is may or may not be the case. Or maybe he's a 4-year kid that you're not going to see anything till junior, senior year. So, yeah, you're right. It runs through the point guard, who the point guard is, and I think in this case, a bigger guard that can see over a lot of defenses might help if they want to shoot the three. If they're going to be running kids off screens on the baseline, you got a Benajay up top who's about 6'5", 6'6". He can see those guys and get the ball to them. So, in some ways, I think it plays into Syracuse's advantage. Whether or not he's really a true lead guard is not the point. The point is, pun intended there, the point is that he can get the ball to guys that are open, and I think they'll have success with that.
Benajay reminds me a lot of a former Duke guard, John Shire. He's about the same size. He's a good point guard, and he can shoot.
Yep.
I mean, he can distribute the ball. And John Shire, his senior year, he led Duke to the national title. So.
And now he's sitting on the bench next to Kay. So.
That's right. He played a couple of years in Israel.
Not the first person to go from Duke to Syracuse for a sport. Paulus, different sport there, though. For the ACC lookout, what do you see? How do you see them stacking up in the Atlantic Coastal Conference?
Well, I think that the ACC is actually really strong this year. And that's not my ACC bias.
I was going to say, is the ACC not strong?
Well...
The double negative was intended there because usually they tend to be a good conference.
Yeah, I mean, the ACC, arguably always the best conference in college basketball. You could definitely make that argument, just like the SEC always is the best conference in football.
Yeah, I mean, you could have the argument with the Big Ten a few years ago. You could have it with the Big East before the whole shambles happened when Syracuse was in the Big East.
But are you going to say that the AAC is the best now?
Yes. No. I don't think anyone expects that to be made, though UConn is a fantastic program.
And SMU is supposed to be good this year. Of course, they'll be on a little probation thing, too. So that
so is Syracuse.
Yeah, that's true.
And then UNC, we have no idea what's happening with that. And Louisville, we'll pass.
I mean, do we even get started on Louisville?
Not yet. That's a special show.
That's
an OTL show when we get more information.
I think we might have heard something on the bottom, like maybe something passing about Louisville and something with some girls.
But I mean, like I could see Syracuse getting like third, fourth in the ACC. I think that's pretty realistic for them,
which would get them into the tournament.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I mean the ACC puts 5, 6, 7 teams into the tournament, especially now that they're up to 15. But I see UNC winning the conference. Unfortunately, I'm not going to try to take any bias out of that. I see Duke probably getting the number 2, and then I see Syracuse and NC State. Those are the two getting the 3 and the 4.
Big time. Timmy John's been just taken hostage of the mic.
Not really, but
so we're gonna have Nick come in for a quick little second on where does he see them stacking up in the ACC?
Yeah, I think in the national conversation, they're definitely on the top 25 conversation, and therefore in the ACC, they're going to be one of the top teams. I think it's pretty clearly Duke, North Carolina 1-2. North Carolina number 1 in some polls in the preseason.
I mean, they're tied with Kentucky right now. So.
Exactly. But nowadays, with so many great freshmen coming in every year, preseason polls are harder and harder to determine. Syracuse obviously has a couple potential impact freshmen, coupled with a very experienced backcourt in Cooney Benajay. That could be a good combination. Obviously, Boeheim's going to miss the first portion of the season. But I think anything
first portion of the conference season.
Exactly. Yeah. And anything less than I would say, top 5 seed in the national tournament would be a disappointment for the Orange this year.
Going high on them. But I do see a possible top 25 if everything breaks according to plan. Obviously, basketball can set up their own schedule, and you can get your toughest games in the beginning of the season. Well, schedule a lot of easy games in the beginning of the season, rack up some wins. Toughest games in the beginning of the season, try to get them at home, which they do against Wisconsin.
I mean, like, you look at that, they got a couple of pretty easy breaks.
Oh, it's not. You set up your own conference out of schedule. Or your own schedule out of conference. I just flipped 2 words incredibly right there. Then things break, and you do the home and away series, and the way things break, as you said, getting a lucky break. But if you win 20 games, you're obviously going to make the tournament. And that sets up so well in college basketball of, oh, we made the tournament. If you make it to the Sweet 16, that right there, it's deemed a success almost for most programs.
For most programs.
And
I mean, like if Kentucky had lost in the Sweet 16 last year, then
well, that's why I said most programs.
Yeah,
and then 2 years ago, them making it to the Sweet 16 was considered, oh, good job. And then they
making it to the national title game
was no one expected ever before UConn ended up winning.
Which nobody picked that one either. So.
No, not at all.
I remember that bracket.
Let's be honest. Let's look. And it's the first day, and bracket is done.
Oh, my national champion's out. That's fun.
That to come in March for the amazing tournament that is March Madness. Tim, what do you just see on doing a breakdown of where can they go this season with all of the off-the-court issues, having that being settled, trying to figure out what's going on, just a new calendar every year?
Well, I actually, during Media Day, spent a little time as sort of a fanboy, even though I'm a year older than he is. But I talked to Jerry McNamara for a little while, and I said, do you guys feel that you can sneak up on people a little bit this year? And I said, not sneak up from a talent standpoint, but a lot of people are going to look at Syracuse and say, wherever they have them in the schedule, either they're in the midst of the 9-game suspension for Coach Boeheim, or if that gets reduced to 4 or 5 or whatever, or they're leading up to that. So from a psychological standpoint as an opponent, whether you're playing them at home or on the road, you're thinking, where is this team's mindset? If Syracuse can get their mindset where it needs to be before the season starts, then I think some of those games where people would maybe make it a toss-up, or some of those ACC games where they play Duke or North Carolina and someone may think, oh yeah, Syracuse is going down, this may be sort of a resiliency moment for this team. And they all love Coach Boeheim. People can say the things they want about Coach as far as the X's and O's and stuff. There's a lot of players on the team, though, that are very loyal to him. And so I think under these circumstances, I think that's what you're going to see, a Syracuse team that kind of bands together. I did look at their schedule, though, as you guys were talking, and the Wisconsin game, although they have it at home, that's part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge, so they really didn't get control
over that.
That's what
too
I was
much.
saying about the lucky break.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just random drawing most of the time.
But over the Thanksgiving break, they're playing in that Battle for Atlantis, and the Battle for Atlantis tournament now has almost become like the East Coast Maui Classic, because you're getting some really good teams, and I'm looking here, UConn and Michigan are going to be there, and I didn't look at the whole field, but I know it's going to be a pretty deep field.
Well, Charlotte is the 4th team.
They are, and that must be who Syracuse plays first.
No. I mean, they're the teams that definitely get in there.
Okay.
So it's Syracuse.
Oh, they have those
Michigan,
weird
UConn.
regionals now where you're not moving on, but you're
even if you win, you're not moving on.
So, I mean, you look at that from the Thanksgiving, 25th, 26th, 27th, in the Battle for Atlantis, turn around December 2nd, Wisconsin, then you go at Georgetown. Now, that's a rivalry game they didn't play last year, but Georgetown's always tough there. Coach Thompson does a great job with that team, very different from how his father coached, but, does a very good job. So Syracuse is going to have a little bit of, an issue, and then they kind of get back into the Colgates and the Cornells and the Montana States, and then they can build that record up before conference play, so...
You're listening to Orange Pulp. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Orange Pulp. I'm Brian, joined by Zach, Tim, Nick, and apparently a little buzzer that's going to go off on the computer. Now, NCAA breakdown. We're gonna lose a little bit of Tim because they want to switch in, so Nick gets more time. Georgia Tech beats Florida State.
Nick deserves more time. Give it to him.
Thanks, bud.
Georgia Tech beats Florida State on a blocked field goal, returned back by Lance Austin. I texted out going, hey, this is going on, and people are like, well, we have a storyline. What did you take away from it, Nick?
Second straight week, we see a crazy finish on special teams. This one, not really a horrible mistake on the level of the Michigan punter dropping the ball. Just a block kick that, unfortunately, Florida State wasn't able to pick up. The Lance Austin coming back, and Florida State this loss, unfortunately, I would say all but eliminates them from playoff contention. Georgia Tech obviously coming in one of the more disappointing teams in the ACC, if not the country. Florida State, I'm not sure how far they dropped in the rankings. I would have them as a fringe top 25 team right now, but yeah, just a tough loss. It's an incredible ending for people not associated with the games. Obviously, for the Georgia Tech fans, this is huge. Definitely going to be the highlight of their season, which has been obviously, again,
very disappointing.
A big disappointment. But these are the finishes you get in college football. Roberto Aguayo, normally one of the best kickers in the country. This was a very long attempt that would have won the game, I believe. But unfortunately, didn't go that way for the Seminoles. And as we mentioned earlier, probably going to be looking for some revenge, or at least someone to take out their aggression, and the Orange could be the victims of that aggression next week.
You know, I think with this loss to Georgia Tech, it sets up so nicely for Clemson.
Do you want to talk about Clemson right now?
I mean, Clemson with that destruction of Miami.
Yeah. Miami had 2 blowouts, one in their favor in the NFL for the Dolphins, and now just blowing out and making everybody leave. Just an absolute destruction game. Clemson's not pulling a Clemson.
No, I think that Clemson showed this year they are for real. They are like the legitimate playoff pick that everybody wants them to be, except for maybe South Carolina fans. But I think with this Florida State loss, it sets up so nicely for the Tigers, because now they can just they've got the game against Florida State, but now they can just kind of waltz into the ACC title game as long as they take care of business. And if they win the ACC title game, I don't see any reason why they're not in the playoff.
I'd be remiss in saying about the other team that was contending for a playoff spot, Utah losing to USC. We all know my obsession with theme parks. I love it. I think I need to do a podcast on that. But just a crazy roller coaster ride for USC over the past few weeks, with Sark being fired, forced leave of absence, then fired a day later, then new coach coming in for interim purposes, then losing Notre Dame when it looked like they dominated the second and third quarter, took the lead in the fourth, couldn't win the game in the fourth quarter against Notre Dame. Then they beat USC. They were favored in this game. That was a big point we were talking, was no team since Wisconsin against Illinois went in as a top 5 team with Juice Williams at the quarterback for Illinois, and gone in being that big of an underdog. And Vegas was right. There's really no other way of saying it, as USC beat them 42-24. Devontae Booker just didn't look that good.
And the polls have just come out. I just want to throw a couple of these out there. Clemson, after their destruction of Miami, up to number 3 in the polls this week. Good for the Tigers.
A lot of us have had them in our top 4.
Yeah. Utah, losing to USC, drops 10 spots to number 13. Not surprised at all.
I don't think they should have been as high as number 3 anyway. I think they should be lower than 13 right now. USC, this was just a case of they're always going to be one of the most talented teams in the country, but this is where it finally came together. And, Utah, they're a good story, but the playoff dream is pretty much gone right now.
What did you see about Travis Wilson just not being good enough? I mean, on Orange Game Day Live, my big thing was I don't trust Travis Wilson. Devontae Booker can only do so much, and Wilson did not have a good game.
No, he 3 interceptions, the second of which was a pick 6, outplayed by Cody Kessler on the other side. But, it was just one of those weeks. The Utes had been surprising a lot of people in a competitive Pac-12 this season that's seen a lot of good quarterback play, a lot of bad quarterback play. But USC, it's been a tough year. They had high expectations coming in. Again, lots of talent. Cody Kessler, a sleeper Heisman candidate coming into the year.
Not so much anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
The Sarkisian drama, of course. But, they've still got a chance to make... Brian's making motions, which I'm not understanding.
I'm not sure what that was all about.
Roller coaster ride. I'm up. I'm going on. Okay,
anyway,
never mind.
Brian.
Anyway, the Trojans still have a chance to get into a decent bowl game, as do the Utes, but Pac-12's wide open. There's really no one team that's taking control of the conference. Oregon's fallen off the face of the earth. UCLA is starting to come back up after a little bumpy path. Stanford, I would actually probably put number 1 in the Pac-12 race right now. They've looked awfully good recently. And
all this without a certain quarterback named Andrew Luck at the helm.
yeah, I mean, where's he been? Oh yeah, he's
throwing interceptions for the Colts.
he's busy, but you guys are rough. The guy's doing his best.
No, we talk about how much we love Andrew Luck. That's why if you've listened,
His
how much we
team's 3-4,
defend it.
and they're still in first place. But we'll get to our
I
NFL
said this
stuff.
one of the first couple of weeks. I have a mad man crush on Andrew Luck, even with the Cape.
Oh, he's a dude. He's a dude.
Oh yeah, Brian likes that word. He's a dude.
That's what we got in common.
So talking in another, you're listening to Orange Pulp. Talking in another game, Old Miss. Now we all know I love just looking through random crap and trying to see what different nuances are. And I was looking through Old Miss schedule because I was seeing where they were ranked, and I was like, with the way their schedule sets up, how does it go? Because they beat Alabama, and as bad as they've looked, they control their own destiny.
I know, it's weird.
That's so bizarre to me that because they play LSU, and I don't expect them to beat LSU, but having beat Bama...
They're in different divisions.
Yes, but having beat Bama, they're to get to the SEC or get to the SEC title game. They are set up that if they win out, they go to the title game.
That's with possibly 2 losses because the one loss to Memphis, obviously not a conference game. So that's if you're going to lose, I suppose, don't lose in conference play.
Connection to that would be Stanford losing to Northwestern the first game of the season. Also, if you're going to lose early. Bama beat Tennessee 19-14. Henry's late touchdown run wins it for Bama. You were talking about before the show, talking about Peyton Manning's face of how he wishes he had a running back. Henry's definitely an awesome running back. How does he stack up in your Heisman candidate?
I mean, I like Henry.
Not Fournette though.
He's not. His first name is not Leonard though. I mean, it's like all three of us said on the podcast on Orange Game Day yesterday. Do you take Leonard Fournette or the field? I'm taking Fournette every time. Yesterday he had 150 yards or something. Sure, only 150. But he set an SEC record.
They also pulled off the dog very quickly as they were
did.
just beating the Hilltoppers, which, side note, greatest blob ever since the history of the movie The Blob. But do you just see this being, because it's a lot closer game than we expected, do you just see this being a letdown game, kind of going into the bye after the bye next week? It's LSU, their 4th SEC game in a row. Do you just see it being hey, college athletes can't get it up for a big occasion every single time, and this not being a big occasion?
I mean, that might have been part of it. But, Nick, do you have something that you'd like to add?
No, I was just going to say Alabama has shown in recent years that they've been prone to these games where they've, not played up to their potential. We saw that in the Ole Miss game earlier this year, barely beating a 5-point win over a Tennessee team that they should be beating by more than 5 points.
Tennessee has looked good. They just haven't been able to finish, and this was
Tennessee's got talent. They've had an up and down
Butch Jones
season.
is a fantastic coach.
Very good coach.
And college football is better when Tennessee's good.
Dobbs is a very good quarterback, but yeah, and Alabama, they'll say they're not looking ahead, but LSU's obviously the game they got circled. It's going to be a clash of the running back titans, Henry and Fournette, 2 guys who would not look out of place on Sundays this year. Fournette, unfortunately for him, possibly.
You weren't here. We already had this conversation.
Stick another year. Okay. But, yeah, that's going to be a fantastic matchup. It's going to have SEC implications. It's going to have playoff implications. And 2 weeks away, but a lot of people already got their eye on that big matchup.
Now, as we already kind of hinted at a little bit earlier with the AP rankings and all of that fun stuff, we all want the playoffs. Tim, coming out from just chilling outside. I'm going to have him walk back in.
Real quick.
Just tapping on the wrist, bringing him in. Who do you have as your top 4?
Oops, there we go. On the way to the podcast today, I wanted to have TCU and Baylor just in the 4 just to piss you off, Brian. You know how it was
Well,
gonna
it's
work.
no longer a playoff, just a national title game.
Well, let's see. I think you have to keep Baylor in the mix right now, without a doubt.
Even with Seth Russell going down yesterday?
Yeah, I still think it's like the Ohio State thing. Like, until you lose, you stay in. That sort of thing. I think Clemson, got to have them in What was our result yesterday on that Utah game? I didn't pay attention. Did they win or lose?
Utah lost.
Utah lost. Okay, so now that I think, unfortunately, due to the Pac-12 and where things are at there, Utah might even drop out. They probably shouldn't.
Well, Utah dropped 10
spots.
spots in the AP.
Yeah.
Just for everyone knows, Tim had to leave to go be sick, and he is ill, so he has an excuse to kind of be. He's doing his best.
I was thinking more about Sunday than I was Saturday this week.
There was a certain
the Patriots fan that you
Pats
are.
Jets game that he wanted.
Yeah, I was more focused in on that here than the college stuff. I thought last week, and this was the team that you like so much for so early, was Michigan State.
Yeah.
That sort of weird win against Michigan. All right, but sometimes when you have those key victories, it kind of launches a team back into the conversation again. And so I think Michigan State being a little bit on that outer rim, they might be able to sneak themselves back in. I don't know. It seemed like for the first few weeks before, and what is it, next week, next Tuesday is the first time that they. So on Election Day, they're actually going to
more important election
release
happens.
the 4 teams, at least for the first time. I felt that it was more clear. Now I think we're back to that situation again where it's like, who are the bubble teams in the men's basketball tournament? It's kind of like the same thing now with these football teams. We're going to be seeing this jockeying in and out for weeks of these 4. And I think, last year, it wasn't until Ohio State really crashed the party at the end and then went on to win the national championship. We were seeing Florida State every year in it. And so now, what I'm kind of just seeing is I can really only commit to a couple teams here and there because there's just going to be so much shuffling.
It's starting to look a little bit, and I'll talk more on this in a second when it comes to my turn, but it almost looks like that 2007 where just chaos was happening where we ended up getting the Alabama-LSU rematch.
You're right. I was thinking about that a little bit, actually. But, with Seth Russell going out yesterday, I love Baylor. Brian, you and I talked about this. We said they just they're able to plug any quarterback in there and make it work. I'm not sure midway through the season that they can do that. So I'm actually going to take Baylor out of the top 4.
I can see your point. I want to see it happen before it happens, but I understand your point.
Yeah. And Tim, you talking about Michigan State, they had a big win yesterday. So, my top 4, it's going to be a little Big Ten heavy this week.
Can Iowa crack it? Would that be crazy to say that if they were to somehow run the table or find their way into the Big Ten title game, does Iowa have any shot of being like a party crasher this year or no?
Well, they can make it to the title game. Their schedule is just mediocre the rest of the way. It's not difficult at all, and if they win out, obviously they're going to make it to the title game.
I mean, if they win the title, I think they have to be in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
But having said that, whoever wins between Ohio State and Michigan State is going to be that representative. And do you really see Iowa beating either of those 2 teams?
I don't know if I really see it, but I mean, again,
it's college football. Anything can happen.
Well,
Any team can beat anybody else.
Ohio State struggled for 3/4 of a game with Indiana. Now we kind of know that was a little fluky because of the way Ohio State's been playing. But
with JT Barrett's back in.
Yeah, and so, but I don't know. I mean, last year, who expected Ohio State to just totally, thump on? They play Wisconsin in the Big Ten
Wisconsin.
game. So
it was like 56-0.
Oh yeah,
59.
Is Iowa?
Oh, worse than the Clemson-Miami game.
Nick coming off the bench to help out.
Shooting from the peanut gallery.
The one thing that helps Iowa, though, is you always think you're playing the Steelers when you line up against them because other than the helmet, everything is exactly the same. Maybe not the font of the numbers, but the uniform is the exact same as the Pittsburgh Steelers. So maybe
recent that means a horrible quarterback list of injuries and a defense that's subpar at best and an amazing running back and wide receiver who the quarterback can't get the ball to.
Wow. So we now know what Brian's immediate thoughts are when you say the Steelers.
But back out of college football. So you say Baylor out. What do you got?
So I'm going to put Ohio State and Michigan State in the playoff. I know it's unconventional. It's like TCU and Baylor both being in the playoff.
Zach, I had more respect for you than this.
No,
how do you have 2 teams that are going to play each other?
I know.
One not. Explain it to me then.
But is that an elimination game, though? Does it have to be an elimination game?
It doesn't have to be an elimination game. Say Michigan State beats Ohio State, and then would it be possible for Ohio State to go to the Big Ten title game then?
Yeah. Or if Michigan State beats Ohio State?
Yeah.
No.
No,
They're in the
okay.
same division, I think.
Yeah, they're in the same
So
division.
there's no rematch side of things.
Okay.
What if it's a
That's-
close game, though? What if
I mean, like,
It's
if,
my same argument with the TCU
I
Baylor.
know, but
They
like,
can't,
if it's a close game,
if they were on other sides of the division and it was a close game and they could fight it, then I could see it. But in even less, in a way, almost less than, because we wouldn't want to see the game a third time.
Yeah.
But I just don't see where one of the teams lose. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the one who's going to be dead set wrong. It's all going to come to fruition.
Probably.
And two teams from Big 12, where there's one true champion, will have two teams make the playoffs. And the Big 10, the former leader in Legends divisions, that was the worst name ever. That's why I have to reference it. Maybe two teams. But I just don't see where both teams can make it when they play
I think that they
each
are
other.
so strong. I think that it's going to be a close game, and I think it's going to be one of those games that you want to see again. And so after they play, and whoever wins, you're going to say, man, I want to see that rematch. And the only place you're going to get it, the college football playoff. And that's what it was made for. No, it was made to show us a true champion.
Now, if there was 8, I could see the argument more.
Oh, yeah, if there was 8, they're both definitely in
Yes.
there. No question.
But in the 4, I just don't see you telling not only one Power 5 conference, but two conferences, Gronk you're not making it.
Well, I guess that's where we're different. But, I mean, even now, I still don't say that the Big Ten is going to win it this year. They're not going to win the national title. I will go on record. The Big Ten will not have the national champion.
You and
That's
I could
right.
agree on that. So do we
That's
all?
right.
Do we all agree
not
on
the
that?
Big Ten.
I don't know.
I think Syracuse is not going to win the title.
They're not in the conversation, but
And then who's your 4th team?
So I've got Clemson and LSU.
Okay, so
And I think that it's going to be the Clemson Tigers that win the national championship.
now for Nick's top 4.
I've heard a lot of sound and fury in these rankings, and I'm just over here, and my top 4 have not changed. I've got Ohio State 1, TCU 2, Clemson 3. I've had Clemson at 3 for a while now. I had them at 3 before it was cool. And I've still got Michigan State at number 4. I have not had Baylor at any point in the year in the top 4. I still don't think they're a top 4 team right now. Seth Russell getting hurt does not help them. I need to see something from Baylor against a quality opponent. They have not played quality opponents this year. You can say TCU's been in some tight games, but head-to-head, I'm going to take TCU over Baylor. And as for the rest, we'll see how it plays out. It's a what-if game. We still got a lot of time left in the season. So many things can happen. Iowa can make the playoff. Stanford could get in. I would not be shocked if, under some crazy circumstances, Memphis makes a run at the top 4 if the top teams just start cannibalizing each other.
I would be shocked.
I would be shocked if
but
you
I
see
want
that
to
as
bring.
well.
Can I bring in a Brian Armstrong side note here?
Side
For
note.
a minute?
Side note.
I like the fact that Nick brings up Memphis. I don't truly believe that any of those teams from the American will end up in the 4, but
So this is the segment where we like to talk about you, say you're nice, but you don't genuinely believe it.
no. But what I'm wondering is, do you think either both or one, Memphis or Temple, will end up in one of those? What is it? The New Year's
Day
Yeah,
Bowls.
Yeah,
I
well,
could see it
There's a
possibly.
I
spot.
see it,
There's
yeah.
a spot for the group of 5.
Yeah,
Are they part of the group of 5? Are they the
They're-
5th?
no,
So
they're
they're
no.
like the 6th.
They're like the 8th.
Okay. All right.
No, I'd say
No,
that
I'm,
the AAC are
I'm
the
exaggerating, but
Like a Fiesta.
they're not in the top.
or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, I could see them making the
Yeah.
New Year's Day or in that bowl a very, very good bowl game.
I don't know. They're supposed to rotate the bowls every year so that the playoff doesn't always go to the same bowl.
You've
Yes.
got your 6 non-playoff
It's a money grab.
big games.
Yeah.
And then you've got the 3 playoff games.
Yes.
This is how it works.
And there's still a bowl game at the same site that
Yes.
the national championship
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
They're just a week apart.
Yes.
But it seems like of all the rotational games, unless one of them is the semifinal, and I don't know if the Fiesta is, but that always seems like that bowl that the extra team gets thrown into.
I
don't
can
know.
completely see that.
Maybe
I'm
it'll
not
be the
ar-
Peach Bowl this year. I don't know.
I'm
but
not
that's
arguing
what it
that
seems
point at
like.
all. I just don't see them
Boise
crashing
State,
the party.
Boise
Yeah.
State always got sent to the Fiesta Bowl.
Where
How many
I
times
still-
did they win that?
I was still depressed when they played TCU when TCU wasn't part of the Power 5, and I was like, let them play a big boy. So both of them play a big boy, so
Yeah.
they don't play each other of the little teams. Now my top 4, very quickly run through it. Ohio State, they haven't lost. Bama, still going to pick Alabama. Basically what it comes down to is whoever wins between Bama and LSU. I think Bama wins that game. Baylor, Seth Russell being hurt doesn't help the chances, but I want to see the plug and play happen before I drop them. And then Clemson at top 4 doesn't look like they're going to do a Clemsoning act, at least this. They play Syracuse, so maybe we'll get lucky and Clemson will pull a Clemson against Syracuse. Now,
I don't know. I just picked Clemson as my national championship. I'm not sure that would be that lucky for me.
well, we all
Don't
know.
put any money on it.
We all know. We all know on Orange Game Day Live on Periscope on Saturdays that Mike will pick the Orange. Jacksonville and the Bills played in England this morning in an NFL switch around.
I'm gonna slide.
We're just gonna open this up for the Bills fan, Nick,
Nation.
and
Away.
Yeah.
you have the floor for 60 seconds. Go.
Well, it's a tough loss for the Bills coming into this game. A game they obviously should have won, but so many injuries on offense, and E.J. Manuel at quarterback led a valiant comeback effort, but just 3 straight turnovers in the second quarter just absolutely killed them. LaShawn McCoy fumbled the ball at the 2-yard line, and the Bills heading into their bye week are 3-4 and in a tough spot in an AFC that's fairly wide open after the top few teams. But I hear a lot. My main beef with the people who are calling for the head of GM Doug Whaley because he got rid of Matt Castle is if you're complaining that you don't have the right backup quarterback, you should probably find something else to complain about. I mean, Matt Castle, if he's in there, he's probably going to win the game. But, Tyrod Taylor will be back after the bye. Typical tough Bills loss. It's what we get to live with.
We're going to have nice little minute segments. I took away your NC State minute, so I'm going to give it to you with the Carolina Panthers. Or if you don't want to talk Panthers, which I'm sure you do, you can take it anywhere else.
I can talk the Panthers.
I figured you wanted to talk Panthers for your minute.
It wasn't going to be Braves, so it's got to be Panthers.
Yeah, it's got to be Panthers. All right, so 1 minute. So the Panthers have not played yet this week. They're going to be playing the Eagles in just a couple hours. Super pumped to see them on a national stage for once after shellacking? No, we didn't shellac the Seahawks last week. Last minute touchdown to beat the defending NFC champions. So I think that the Panthers are finally sort of starting to prove some people wrong, to say, hey, we really are the real deal. Still one of those undefeated teams. Not a whole lot of them left. I think that Cam Newton is finally showing this year that he can be that franchise quarterback, that he can be that guy that directs a team to division championships, to maybe a couple of conference championships, maybe a Super Bowl berth. Maybe Cam Newton is the guy that's under center, or in shotgun, to
say he's never under center
to lead the Panthers to the Super Bowl.
We're going to continue this for a quick second because I have one question for you. Who would you rather have, Andy Dalton or Cam Newton?
Cam Newton.
Agreed.
Yeah, Andy Dalton. He, ginger lightning.
Ginger lightning. What the? I've never. That's going to bring my cough back from being sick. I've never heard ginger lightning, but for the year that he's having, maybe ginger lightning is a compliment. I don't know.
I just came up with that. I wanted to give him a nickname, and I just couldn't come up with anything.
I smirked a little, and the face Tim made when you said that. I make this reference before, but it seems so fitting. It's like the kid who just got an extra cookie, or Gronk giving Gronk a shot. It's saying here, it's on the house.
Oh, speaking of Gronk, so Tim, how about those Patriots?
Thank you for stealing.
I have to do this once a week.
You're going to host from now on. Go ahead.
I have to do this once a week.
Yes.
Well, there's a luxury in being a Patriots fan in the last 15 years. Never before that, but the last 15 years. Is sometimes you can watch a game and you can sort of doze off, especially when you're a little, under the weather. And then you wake up and it's the fourth quarter and you're like, holy, what just happened here? The Jets are kind of back in this thing. But unfortunately for the Jets, they proved that, we talk about pulling a Clemson. They pull the Jets. It doesn't matter who the coach is, who the players are, and they end up losing here in the end. But, the Patriots, again, this week, it seems like, I don't want to say they toy with teams because they don't, but they kind of, well, maybe the divisional opponents, but they really kind of outclass, again, outthink, adjust when they need to. Gronk was not featured as much in that first half, and then all of a sudden he's featured again. Whoa, Danny Amendola looking like a Pro Bowl player 2 weeks in a row now with over 100 yards receiving. So, I think things are just, really coming together for New England, if that's even possible. And week by week, they get better and better at different facets of the game. I feel really confident. But they have a quick turnaround this week. They come, Miami. I don't know, but they play them on Thursday, so you gotta, be ready to go there. It was nice to see Brandon LaFell back today as well, but he dropped a lot of balls, so
more like drops him.
Yeah, if he can
Brandon LaFell, former Panther.
Yeah, that's right, he was. So
couldn't do anything for that franchise,
but he could win a Super Bowl with the Patriots. So, I hope that he'll be ready this coming Thursday. But New England just stays atop the division, and, we keep the wheels on the bus rolling. So
the Patriots are just gronking around. And on the last poor clock management done by Fitzpatrick at the end of the game, where you can't throw over the middle in such a short period of time, what do you make of that?
Well, I like Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, think whether he's been in Buffalo or Houston or now the Jets. He's that.
What? He was a former Harvard grad.
He was a Harvard grad. That's right.
So he's smart.
Well, that's
Maybe
what people assume.
He's smart, but he did horrific clock management at the end of that game.
Which is funny because he's like a clock manager during the game. He doesn't screw up a lot, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. But I think, Brandon Marshall has had some decent games, but he didn't really do anything to wow you today. And the Patriots cornerbacks are not really even that strong. So he was probably saying, hey, I can't go deep. I got to go short. And then they run out of time.
In a transition to the World Series, we know we've got some huge baseball fans here. You've got some Red Sox fans in here who are not too happy. You've got
I'm not disappointed. Fan. The Mets are my National League team, so I'm not disappointed.
Oh, yes, the National League team.
Well, the Braves are my team. So,
yeah, so you're not doing much better. Mets and Royals. Murphy's Law. It almost seems. How did Murphy, who hasn't hit that many home runs in a calendar month in his career, do what he did in the postseason and against the pitchers he did it against?
There are some guys that just show up when the lights are bright, and maybe he needs to be playing on a bigger stage than in is it Queens? Is that where the Mets play?
Sometimes Flushing Meadows. They decide which one each day they want to acknowledge as
City
their
Field.
home.
City Field. Maybe he needs to travel a few miles.
I think the interesting thing with Murph this year is when.
Wait, I've got to pause you because that went over my head for a good half a second. I had to do this slow roll at him. Are you suggesting he goes to the New York Yankees?
Oh, Bankies. I like that. I like that.
You've never heard that before?
No, I've never heard that before.
Very common expression.
Okay.
So.
Well,
in Elmira.
In Elmira, where they're outnumbered by cows.
No,
oh my God.
No,
that's Mansfield.
That's Mansfield. That's Mansfield. Mansfield was where I went to undergrad.
Yeah. Okay, so no, I'm not suggesting that, but maybe if the check's big enough, I'm sure anybody would go.
He's not saying. He's just saying. Gotcha.
Well, the Mets have saved a lot of money over the last few years, for good or for bad. Maybe for good now because we've seen some of the guys develop through their system, pitchers, position players.
No Bernie Madoff issues.
No, exactly. None of those issues, too. So, from a Mets standpoint, maybe they actually have money to re-sign Murph and re-sign Cespedes. I don't know if those things are going to happen.
I think Cespedes is probably the better of
He's the top
best
priority.
of us for the rest of us.
Yeah. But, Murph's just in a groove right now. And what I was trying to say earlier is when David Wright got hurt and they had to shuffle a lot of different players around, they put Murph at third. He struggled there. I think they finally said, look, you're going to be our second baseman. You're going to bat whatever it is in the order. And he just feels very, very confident about where he is right now. So, it's a little bit of a shocker that, he would hit be the first player in Major League history to have 6 home runs in 6 consecutive games. But some guys get into a groove, and he's there now. So,
Nick?
Yeah, just finishing up on the Murphy topic of Murphy. Very similar to what David Freese did a couple of years ago at the St. Louis Cardinals. All of his postseason heroics. He wasn't hitting a home run every single game, but we could see the similarities there. And if you're talking about him going to the Yankees, rumors obviously abound that the Yankees are going to one day make a run at Bryce Harper, so is there room for both of them there? I don't think Murphy will end up with the Yankees, but that's a conversation for another day.
That was just something that happened to come to mind, and I was like, well,
that's
maybe.
All right. we like those hypotheticals. But going into the other side with the Royals have really developed into the team that everyone loves to hate. They got the bad boy mentality. They've got really no superstars in the lineup. Lorenzo Cain had an incredible year, but I wouldn't classify him as a Mike Trout level player.
I mean, do you call Moustakas? Do you call him maybe a superstar on that team?
Hosmer?
I wouldn't say so. Moustakas, I wouldn't classify him as even a star. Hosmer's pretty good. Alex Gordon's a tremendous left fielder, especially with the glove. And that's the Royals' forte. They're not going to make mistakes in the field. They've got a great pitching staff. And I'm going to give them a slight edge over the Mets. This is going to be at least a 6 or 7 game series.
Well, there's been, 5, 6 AL teams to return to the World Series after losing a winner-take-all game, and all of those AL teams have won. So maybe this is the year for the Royals.
The
30th anniversary of their last World Series.
The one thing getting back to, Murphy will turn this postseason into a fat paycheck, that's for sure. Now, for final thoughts going on, we've got Nick's notes. Go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. I'm going to steer it to a sport that we haven't really covered at all.
Curling.
In this segment. No, that's actually that's for another day.
Downhill luge.
No, not quite. We're going to go with hockey. The hockey season has started without not a whole lot of people noticing. And the big story of the season has been the Montreal Canadiens off to one of the best starts in NHL history and their franchise history. Incredible considering the storied tradition of the Montreal franchise, right up there with the Boston Celtics and the New York Yankees as far as professional sports organizations. And they've done it with really kind of a no-name platoon of guys scoring. They've got Max Pacioretty up there, Alex Galchenyuk, but they've done it with defense. Carey Price, the best goaltender in the world, PK Subban, a Norris.
A rock for them.
Yep, a Norris candidate, the bane of all Boston Bruins fans.
Yeah, but I like Subban. I'm probably one of those guys on the outside. He's a great player.
So the Canadiens, starting the season 9-0-0. I don't think they're going to go 82-0-0, but they're looking like the
never
best
say
team.
never.
Well, we'll see. Well, looking like the best team in hockey right now. Obviously, barely even less than a month into the season, but we'll have to see where it goes from here. I'm right behind the NFL. NHL is my number 2 sport. The Sabres have looked not great this year, but it'll be interesting to see where the Canadiens go. They've been, obviously, I would say, the story of the early NHL season.
Tim, a controversial issue helps if I can talk, I promise.
You want me to just take
Tim's
it from here?
takes.
Well, I for whatever reason, it's something about growing up in the Utica area that if you leave the Utica area, you always kind of rag on it. There are some foods that you like, but other than that, you don't admit that you're from Utica unless somebody asks you. And the reason I bring this into play is, it was last weekend, Mexico High School, which is kind of out here in the Syracuse area. It's kind of between Oswego and Syracuse. They were playing
Because when we think Mexico, we think upstate New York.
Yeah.
And 9 inches of snow.
That's right. And they were playing Vernon Verona Sherrill, which is where the Turning Stone Casino is, actually the alma mater of Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. And so this kid, the quarterback for Mexico, his name is, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but Dante Turo, and he's a junior quarterback. He ran 73 yards for a touchdown. And supposedly he's a religious guy, but when he got to the end zone, he didn't even go down on one knee like we see NFL players do sometimes. He just simply pointed to the sky, and he was hit with a penalty from the referees. And the reason why I'm going back on Utica is because the game was played at VVS, that would have been the Utica chapter of football officials for Central New York would have covered that game based on where the location was. And I just thought, this is absolutely absurd. It's on the same level as those NFL fines for how you wear your socks and how you wear your eye black and how you do this, that, and the next thing.
I think it's even worse because the NFL grandfather clause is in religious celebrations.
Exactly. And I just thought, like, this kid, it wasn't even a demonstrative statement. He didn't do the sign of the cross. He didn't, get down on one knee. He didn't engage with other players in a prayer. It was just simply, I'm pointing to this guy. He could have been pointing to anyone, a family member, but he admitted that he was pointing to God later on. And the fact that they would flag, I hate to say it, but a lot of these referees are so out of shape that they're offsides the minute they step on the field. So they ought to penalize themselves just for being out of shape and not being able to referee the game properly. So some rules need to be read, some things need to be changed, and I just say, how dare we get on somebody's case for a religious moment they're having as an athlete.
Well said. Now, Zach, I referenced a little bit of what you were going to talk about in a second. Zach zeroing in. Go.
So, last week,
America.
Hashtag America. Last week, Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, announced that the 2016 Olympics would be his last. And so
He has done this before, though.
he has done this before, but I think now it's for truth. Because they have named his replacement. Starting in 2017, my favorite coach in the NBA,
Respect the game.
Greg Popovich, is taking over for Coach K. And I think it's just such a logical transition. Coach K, best college coach today, maybe all time. You could make that argument. Going to the best professional coach today in Greg Popovich. No question about that. I don't care what your argument is. You're wrong.
You could agree with me or you could be wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I love Pop. I know how he deals with the media. I think it's so funny, even as a member of the media now. But, you know, listening to like his press conference and when he was accepting the job and they announced him as the head coach.
Was he in the military too, or a
He
West
was in the
Point
military.
person?
Yeah,
Okay.
he was in the military. I think he was in the Navy. I think it was.
Okay.
Coach K, he was in the Army.
Yeah.
So, I mean, clearly two guys that care about this country. So I think that's just a great transition into a new coach.
I want to name an early assistant, Brad Stevens of the Boston Celtics, and that's
He
not
was
being a homer.
He was reportedly in consideration for the head job.
Exactly, and he's got the respect of a lot of players, including LeBron. Even though LeBron may not be around after that 2016 Olympics, I think Brad would be a great assistant coach.
Yeah, I think so too. And now for the
BA moment.
BA moment.
BA moment.
I still don't understand why I get so much crap for that. I thought it was a good idea.
Well,
Clearly
I'm glad
not.
you thought it was a good idea.
Initials, the double entendre. Okay. So, watching today's football game in the morning, waking up all early. I had 2 fantasy football players, so that was my attraction to it. I'm watching going, wow, what did Britain do to us, more particularly the NFL, to get this game? Actually, this season's game. Then I started thinking, wow, these games, I don't remember a good one happening. So I looked it up and did a little research on the topic and saw since 2007, when all said and done for the game, there have been 18 teams with a 500 or worse record by the time the game was done. Sounds not great. Here's what makes it a big deal. 13 games have been played. Total of 26 teams. So 18 of the 26 teams under 500 or worse.
Have been garbage. Gotcha.
So awful. This leads us to a bigger issue. Getting a team over there. Now there's the cost of living argument. Get that out of there. There's the time difference argument. We'll ignore that one. I want to go into what we know right now. What we know is Tottenham is getting a new stadium, and they play in Wembley right now for the NFL games. Wembley is on my list of places I want to go see a game, soccer in all likelihood, but regardless. Tottenham's getting a new stadium in 2018, and they already have a contract with the NFL to play at least 2 games a year there in Tottenham's new stadium for the next 10 years. So from 2018 to 2028. At least 2 being the pivotal thing. Now, in the short term, they play their games at Wembley, which is kind of a topic because right now they don't have a franchise there. But Tottenham has got to play somewhere while their stadium's being built. Wembley is that option. Chelsea needs to get their stadium redone and refurbished. So they need to play some games during those couple years of refurbishment. Wembley is that option. So we're adding 2, those are rumors, obviously. There are 2 soccer teams with all their home games at Wembley. Now we're going to try in the same time to throw more football games over there while trying to establish a franchise. So be prepared for more mediocre teams to come playing over there and the NFL to try to get more piece of the pie being football or football over there. And you think, can this get any worse? Can the games get over there? It can't possibly get worse. Yes, it can. Next week is the last game this season that they'll be playing in London. The Lions versus the Chiefs.
Talk about a must-see game.
Yep. Now, normally we would wrap up and end, but I want to have a question. And I told Zach I was doing it, and I told Tim I was doing it. Explain you and Chip Kelly, Tim.
Oh, well, I have a really good friend who loves the Eagles, loved them his entire life. And we got talking this summer, and he was really nervous about Chip Kelly, obviously being there for a couple of years. And he also said that, but he liked what he was doing. Some of the moves, he appreciated that there was like some sort of pattern there. And I said, and my friend's name is Joe. I'm going to have to send him this podcast. And I said, Joe, Chip Kelly reminds me of Rick Pitino taking over the Celtics. When Rick Pitino took over the Celtics, he wanted a full-court press, which you can't do in the NBA. He tried to bring in a lot of his guys, Kentucky guys. He had Antoine Walker. He had Ron Mercer. He had Tony Delk. And what happened during the Pitino years? The Pitino years set the Celtics back quite a long ways. They made the playoffs, I think, like 2003, 2004, but it wasn't until later on that they, were a championship team again. I see Chip Kelly doing the same thing. Brings his coaches in from Oregon, tries to get some more Oregon players in there. And then the things like monitoring what guys are eating, when they're sleeping, I just think it's too much. I'm not saying Chip Kelly doesn't know football. He's won games with the Eagles. The Eagles even played well the last couple weeks. They might even beat the Panthers tonight. I have no idea. But I just think you cannot come in and think that you are the know-everything kind of guy. I really think that if there is a college program out there that is struggling, that may be thinking about getting a new coach, I think it'd be a great move for Chip Kelly to go back to college, because at the college level, you really can control a lot of those things. I don't think you can at the NFL level. You know what? I put that on Twitter a couple weeks ago. Of course, nobody knows me on Twitter, so nobody responded.
T-Ferg Sportsnet.
That's right. But I thought that maybe USC would be a good spot for him. So it's not so much that – I don't think the guy's a moron, but I just think the things that he does in the NFL doesn't work long term.
Who is the best coach in the NFL?
There are years where Belichick really gets on my nerves. But obviously
Belichick.
Yeah.
It's Riverboat Ron.
it is not Riverboat Ron, though. I just saw his new commercial with the mattress, and it's hilarious. If you haven't seen it, Google
Definitely
commercial.
Look that up.
Google commercial Riverboat Ron or Riverboat Rivera. The best coach in the NFL is Bill Belichick. Mm-hmm. He calls Chip Kelly, flies to him. Mm-hmm. To talk about his offense and get things and take samples. There's that. What did Chip Kelly go in his first 2 years? 20-12. Mm-hmm. Belichick, his first 2 years, 13-19.
With who? With the Browns?
Browns, yes.
Right.
And then we all know what happened with the Patriots.
Right.
And he even called saying, hey, we're probably getting fired here. And then Bledsoe became Bledsoe. And then Tommy became Tommy.
He's Tommy, all right.
Oh, yes. T. Brady. But to say everything, and I'm so glad you didn't go to the racist argument. I'm so glad that didn't happen.
I don't know if that's true or not. It could be very well true, but I'm just looking at what's going on in the field. Now, if that is part of the equation and some truth can come out of that, well, then get the hell out of the league, because you don't belong. Because it's the best players in the league, at a lot of positions are African American. So if that's going to be an issue for a coach, then they don't belong. But I can't get into what I don't know, so that's why I didn't bring the
completely
race in.
agree. I don't think he is a racist. Obviously, I don't know him firsthand, but he ran African Americans out. But having wrapped up in that, I'm glad you got to kind of explain it, because I always just felt like maybe we should let this go, and it always felt like almost you hating the guy, and I'm like, why? So I'm glad we got that out there. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to Orange Pulp. Also follow us on our Twitter page. We're the official NFL picks we sent out earlier, having to record this later in the day. Raiders are up 37-6. Wow. And the Cowboys trail the Giants 17-13. Thank you for listening. For Zach, Nick is our guest / possibly new addition as a full-on.
I like it. Tweet at us that you like Nick. I think he's doing good.
And then we have, who you just heard, big time, Timmy John. I'm Brian. Thank you for listening to Orange Pulp.
Thanks again.